It hurts. Not in the dramatic way people expect heartbreak to look. Not in the way movies show it, where everything collapses in one loud moment. This kind of hurt is quieter. It sits somewhere inside the chest, like a truth that arrived gently, but refuses to leave. And the strange part is, I still have plans. Big ones. Dreams about the kind of life I want to build. The kind of future I used to picture so clearly. For a long time, every version of that future had you in it. Not because I forced you there, but because it simply felt natural. Like the story of my life had somehow written your name beside mine without hesitation. All I ever did was ask for clarity. That was it. Not perfection. Not promises that life itself cannot guarantee. Just honesty. Just the courage to say what you truly feel, even if the truth is uncomfortable. But somehow that truth never came. Instead, there were pauses, half answers, moments where I asked simple questions, and your silence stretched longer than it should have. And over time, those silences began to say more than any words you could have spoken. It hurts a little, maybe more than a little. Because all I ever wished for, all I ever imagined, was to spend the rest of my life with you. I believed in that future. I didn't just dream it casually. I built it in my mind, piece by piece. I thought we were perfect. Not perfect in the unrealistic sense where nothing ever goes wrong, but perfect in the way two people who truly understand each other decide to keep choosing each other even when life becomes difficult. I don't think I've ever loved anyone more than I loved you. That kind of love doesn't appear overnight. It grows slowly, through conversations that stretch late into the night, through small sacrifices that feel easy because you're making them for someone you care about, through shared struggles, through laughter that feels effortless, through the quiet comfort of simply knowing someone is there. We made sacrifices to reach this stage, more than I can count. Moments where we chose patience when things were not easy. Moments where we held on when it would have been easier to walk away. That's why it's difficult to understand. After everything we built together, how can you suddenly stand here unsure of what you want? The truth is, I saw it coming, long before this moment. Yes, I saw it. Because when you have experienced someone's love at its highest point, you begin to recognize the smallest changes. You notice when the warmth shifts. You notice when something subtle starts to fade. The visits began to change first. They became shorter. Not drastically, just enough to feel different. Enough to make me wonder, but not enough to confront. Then the conversations changed. The deep ones, the kind where we shared thoughts, dreams, fears, and pieces of ourselves that we didn't show the rest of the world. Those conversations slowly disappeared. They didn't end suddenly. They just faded. Like a song playing in another room, getting quieter until one day you realize it stopped completely. Even your presence began to feel different. There was a time when simply sitting beside you felt like peace. But somewhere along the way, that peace turned into distance. And the hardest part to admit was how your touch changed. Something that once felt natural began to feel hesitant, almost careful. There were moments when being intimate with you started to feel like you were doing me a favor instead of sharing something mutual. And that feeling stayed with me, quietly, uncomfortably. I sensed it. Every instinct in me recognized it. But I shrugged it off. Because when you love someone deeply, you convince yourself that temporary distance is normal. You tell yourself that people go through phases, that stress in life can create walls that will eventually come down. So I ignored what my heart already understood. Yes, I saw it coming. But I hoped I was wrong. I held on to the version of us that existed at our best. The version where everything felt real and certain and strong. The memories are still there. Every moment we shared, every laugh, every promise that once felt genuine, they remain intact. But now they feel different, like photographs that were once bright but have slowly faded with time. Still recognizable, still meaningful, yet somehow touched by something that changed their color. It's strange how a story can feel perfect while you're living inside it. And only later you begin to see the cracks that were quietly forming all along. Our story was beautiful. I still believe that. But beauty alone does not guarantee permanence. Sometimes, even the most beautiful stories end in ways we never imagined. You might think I'm making this about myself. You might believe this is just my pride speaking. But it isn't. This is simply honesty. Honesty about the pain of realizing that someone you loved deeply no longer stands in the same place with you. Because heartbreak is not always about betrayal. Sometimes it's about distance. Sometimes it's about watching love slowly fade while pretending not to notice. Sometimes it's about standing still while the other person quietly walks away. And the hardest part is not the ending. The hardest part is the moment you realize you were the only one still fighting for something that had already started to disappear. It hurts, not just because you might be leaving, but because somewhere along the way, you stopped loving me with the same certainty I had for you. And the most painful truth of all is that I felt it happening, little by little, moment by moment, until one day the silence finally said what you never had the courage to say. It hurts. And the strange thing is, even now, after understanding all of this, after seeing every sign clearly, a small part of me still wishes that everything I felt was wrong. That one day you will look at me again the way you used to, with the kind of love that made the future feel simple. But deep down, I know something now that I didn't want to accept before. Love cannot survive where clarity refuses to live. And no matter how deeply someone loves, they should never have to guess whether they are still loved in return. So yes, it hurts. Maybe a little, maybe more than I want to admit. But sometimes pain is simply the moment when the heart finally accepts what the soul already knew. And maybe the real heartbreak is not that love ended. Maybe the real heartbreak is realizing I was still holding on long after you had already let go.